Okay, let's unpack this moment in galactic history. We are diving into a crisis where really the boundaries between a local conflict, ancient science, and psychological warfare just completely dissolved.
It really did. And this deep dive, it's all about a period when the very foundations of the Galactic Alliance and the Jedi Order were, well, they were cracking under the strain of an enemy that was not only massive in scale, but also masterfully deceptive.
That's a perfect way to put it. Our sources, they describe this multi-front collapse. I mean, what kicked off as a seemingly localized skirmish with the Killik colony?
Right, this collective species that was expanding pretty aggressively into the Utikittu Nebula.
Exactly. And that just escalates really, really fast into a full-blown military and political catastrophe.
And the sheer number of things happening all at once. You have military blockades, this nanotechnology plague, you've got assassination plots, and the Jedi Order itself is just fracturing from the inside. It's what makes this whole period so hard to get a handle on.
So, our mission today is to try and cut through some of that noise. We want to give you the true narrative. What were the secret weapons, the hidden fleets, and the deep cover political plots that were all concealed just beneath the surface of this conflict with the Killik Dark Nest?
Also known as Gorog. And it ropes in everyone. You got the Jedi Order, the Galactic Alliance, and the fiercely territorial Chiss ascendancy all colliding over this one sentient collective mind.
And to really get a sense of the level of planning involved here, we can't start with the politicians or even the Jedi Council. We have to start with, of all things, a high-stakes robbery on a gas giant.
Yes, because that robbery, it just demonstrates the sheer calculated disruption that really defined this entire conflict from the get-go.
Exactly. So picture this. You're high above the crimson mists of Bespin, way down near the lowest habitable life zone. This is where the Tubana tappers operate.
Slipping in to steal this incredibly valuable, super-cooled, spin-sealed Tubana gas. And this isn't just, common fuel.
No. This stuff is the lifeblood of hyperdrive technology, and it is incredibly volatile. If you lose that spin seal or it warms up even a little, you're talking millions of credits in lost infrastructure and product. Gone.
And this particular job involves two Jedi Knights, Jacen Solo and Zek. They're on the hunt for these thieves who are siphoning gas from platforms like Best 3.
And they're using ion guns, which is a key detail. A blaster bolt anywhere near that much Tabana gas could set off a chain reaction and, well, destroy the whole platform.
But these thieves, they're either reckless or they just flat out don't care about self-preservation.
Yep.
Because as the Jedi close in, they just release this massive siphoning balloon full of the super-cooled gas right at them.
Jaina has to pull this heart-stopping evasive maneuver. I mean, she nearly tears her cloud car apart just to avoid being wiped out by the shockwave of this exploding gas bag.
And that tells Jane and Zek immediately that this isn't just some desperate smash and grab. This is a calculated action. It's designed to do damage and create the biggest possible distraction.
The chase leads them deeper through this fiercely turbulent wind wall. It's all crimson vapor and stabbing lightning. Jaina literally has to let go of the controls entirely.
Right, just trusting the cloud car's automatic systems to not get ripped to shreds by the sheer winds.
And it's where they're taking the stolen gas that really elevates this from simple piracy to strategic sabotage. They come out into the calm center of the storm, the Deadeye.
And there it is, the corroded towers of an ancient abandoned refinery. And the thieves are rushing the stolen Tabana there for one reason: carbonite freezing.
And that's the key step, isn't it, for anyone who doesn't know the logistics?
You have to freeze it. You steal Tabana gas, you have to immediately freeze it solid in carbonite. It's the only way to stabilize it for long-distance haul and keep its value. So they're not just stealing it, they're prepping it for a major shipment.
But the whole operation goes critical the second the Jedi land. They feel this shudder run through the station. The main repulsor lift generator is failing.
And the thieves, they're already gone. They flee in a hidden, larger ship, but not before they divert all the remaining power to the carbonite freezers and shut down that main generator.
It's the calculated disruption you mentioned. The goal wasn't just the theft. The theft was the bait for a trap. Jaina has to use the Force just to pull their cloud car back onto the platform as the whole structure starts to collapse into the clouds.
And Zek realizes, with just pure fury, that this entire high-risk operation, the theft, the chase, the collapsing station, it was all a warning.
A warning to the Jedi, and by extension the Galactic Alliance, to stay out of the Killik's business. It establishes their whole MO right from the start. Every single action is designed to maximize both political and physical chaos. So from that high-action, high-tech opening, the whole story pivots to Wotiba. This world recently claimed by the Killiks, which at first glance looks like the calm before the storm.
Right. And Han Solo, he remembers this world as just a dreary, boggy swamp, muddy, covered in conifer forests. Nothing special.
But the contrast is immediate and, frankly, pretty jarring. Han and Leia get there, and the planet has been utterly transformed by the Sarah's nest.
Yeah, the source material paints this picture of almost utopian organization. You got these iridescent tunnel houses built high up on log pilings over the marsh, massive artificial waterfalls carved into the landscape.
And the air is thick with the aroma of sweet membrosia, which is the Killik food source, and slow-roasted nerf ribs. It feels engineered, it feels a little too perfect and deeply unnatural.
And it's in this engineered paradise that we first meet the joiners.
These are non-Killik beings, individuals from all over Twi'leks, humans, you name it, who've spent too much time in the Killik collective and have, for all intents and purposes, just surrendered their individuality to it.
Alima Rar is the big example we'll get to. But here, Han and Leia just see these glittered-up joiners smiling and dancing on balconies. They're physically still themselves, but psychologically, they're gone. Just absorbed into the hive mind, and they have this unnerving level of collective euphoria.
It's a very visual way of showing you just how pervasive the Killik collective's power is, and how easily free will can just get swallowed up.
But like you said, that idyllic facade is paper thin,
Yeah.
and it dissolves the moment they see the first signs of the central mystery of this whole story, the fizz.
And this is just a truly horrifying image. In a marshy gutter, there's a lone Killik insect lying face down, half covered in this dull, repulsive gray froth.
It's dissolving.
Okay.
I mean, it's literally disintegrating before their eyes. Its shell is softening, its legs are melting into the muck.
And the reaction from the locals is almost more disturbing than the sight itself. A wobbly Quarren spacer, who's clearly had a few too many, just steps forward with this heavy blaster pistol.
I'm Mersun Flash 4.
Right, and he just shoots the suffering insect, sprays Keaton and gray froth all over a nearby hangar.
And the Quarren's explanation is that the Jedi were flying a fizz around, which suggests this disintegrating froth, this fizz, is a common accepted local problem. The spacers are used to seeing it and, well, dealing with it by execution.
Leia notes that immediate accepted violence. The Killik had been drumming its thorax and pointing at Han's blaster. It was basically begging to be put out of its misery. That one moment just sets the tone. They're dealing with a localized horror show that the rest of the galaxy has already just all normalized.
Han's instinct is to get out of there immediately. He senses a trap, and that trap is sprung the second they meet Raynar Sol.
Who is no longer the man they once knew. He is now Unuthul, the collective will of the entire colony.
And his transformation it's a physical manifestation of his mental state. Raynar was this respected figure. Unuthul, though. He's tall and regal, but his face is just scarred. It's raw and melted looking. No ears, no hair, no nose. It has that shiny, stiff quality of a severe burn scar.
And he's cold. The first thing he does is refuse Han's handshake, just rejects it, and opts for this formal, buggish greeting of rubbing forearms.
That refusal is the first political act. The suspicion is just. You can feel it. Unuthul questions why they're even there, saying the Jedi weren't summoned.
And when Luke tries to bring up the real problem, the assassination plots against Mara, the rise of the Darkness Unuthul doesn't even deny it. He just shifts the blame completely.
And this is where the psychological game really kicks into high gear. The accepted story was that Gorog, the Dark Nest, was created when some corrupted Chiss joiners entered the colony.
But Unuthul throws that out. He delivers this specific, highly detailed historical counterclaim that is so devastating because it attacks Mara's past, and through her, it attacks Luke's trust in her.
He claims Gorog was created decades ago by two people, Beta Eyes and her daughter, and that name connects directly to Mara Jade Skywalker's past as the Emperor's hand. She was sent by Palpatine to assassinate Daxor Eyes, an Intellects 4 designer, and get a data list.
And according to Unuthul, this is where she failed. She botched the data retrieval and, crucially, she left Beta Eyes and her daughter alive, telling them to just vanish forever.
So the narrative Unuthul is spinning is that Gorog recognized Mara at a crash site the previous year, and now the Killiks are convinced that the Dark Nest was created by these women as revenge for the attempt on their father and husband.
Okay, hang on. Let's pause there. Unuthul is this corrupt collective will that we already know has no concept of trust or honor. How can Luke possibly entertain this decades-old, incredibly convenient accusation coming from him?
Because Unuthul isn't just playing on history. He's playing on vulnerability. He's using this story specifically to distract Luke from what's really happening. the military mobilization. He's weaponizing Mara's guilt, and he's trying to coerce the Jedi into solving his current problem, which is the Fizz.
But there's more to it, isn't there? He's targeting Luke's deepest weakness.
The connection to Padme, exactly.
Mm.
Later on, Alima Rar, the joiner, she suggests that Daxter Eyes, the man Mara was supposed to kill, was the only person who could have helped Luke unlock the secrets of his mother's past.
So Unathil is basically telling Luke, you're trapped here because your wife's old mistake destroyed your only shot at understanding where you came from.
It is a devastatingly effective political weapon. And the immediate fallout is that Luke and Han are forced to agree to stay on Wotapa until the Jedi find a cure for the Fizz. It guarantees Leia, Mara, and Saba can leave peacefully.
Which Han immediately calls out for what it is. It's a hostage situation.
But Luke tries to frame it as this principled stance. A way to rebuild honor and principle in the Jedi Order after the Yuuzhan Vong War. He wants to show that a Jedi is a force for good, even when dealing with an enemy. He's fighting against that ruthless pragmatism that's starting to creep into the Jedi ethos.
But C-3PO just lays the cynicism of it all bare. The protocol droid points out that he can't find a functional word for trust or honor in any of the Killik languages.
Their whole concept of truth is fluid. It changes based on the immediate needs of the collective. And Unathil confirms this. He says, we have believed the new truth for some time. Nothing you could say would make us change our mind.
They're dealing with a species that literally rewrites its own history to fit its political goals. And now they're trapped, trying to find a cure for a plague caused by an enemy they absolutely cannot trust. So while Luke and Han are stuck in that ethical and political mess, the Fizz samples make their way back to Ossus for analysis by Dr. Silgal. And this is where the local horror show escalates into a high-level scientific and military crisis that, honestly, rewrites a bit of galactic history.
The first findings are they're absolutely shocking, and they completely overturn every assumption that everyone, including the Killiks themselves, had made.
Silgal determines the froth is not dark nest black membrosia, which is their poisonous food. It's not a bioweapon engineered by Gorog at all.
It's advanced, self-replicating nanotechnology, molecule machines.
That is a critical distinction. It's not a toxin, it's an automated terraforming system.
Right. Silgal describes its function as disassembling contaminants, molecule by molecule, and then using that raw material to build more of itself. The whole system is designed to maintain an optimal environment for its original creators, whoever they were, millennia ago.
And the sheer age and resilience of this technology is just staggering. Silgal calculates that this nanotech actually survived the supernova that created the Utekchi Nebula only 1,000 standard years ago.
Just think about that for a second. A star went supercritical, wiped out basically all life in the system, but this nanotech survived inside the blast zone.
How is that even physically possible? A supernova should be a clean slate.
The theory from the sources is that pockets of it survived, either because it's just that resilient, or maybe it was shielded deep inside a planet's mantle, just lying dormant, and once the region cooled, the nanotech just started doing its job again, systematically restoring the world.
So it made the soil fertile again pretty quickly, but it couldn't sustain a biological ecosystem on its own.
Which is why the Chugatu Nebula worlds are these beautiful, fertile, but completely empty paradise worlds. They were perfectly prepped for the Killiks to move in and colonize, completely unaware they were inheriting an automated, ancient cleanup crew.
And this explains why the Fizz is popping up on multiple worlds and why it's so powerful. And at the same time, Luke and Han, who are tracking Gorog operations on Wotaba, they accidentally confirm Silgal's findings out in the field.
Yeah, they realize the Fizz only targets non-native contaminants. They see it attacking spilled reactor fuel, hyperdrive coolant, the stuff you need for starships. It also attacks the bodies of Killik assassins who were contaminated by the ships they were on.
And the smugglers' bodyguards, too, who probably tracked in pollutants. But, and this is the key scientific confirmation, it completely ignores natural things like homogeny logs and moorstone.
But the Killiks are completely misinterpreting what they're seeing.
They think it's a toxin. So they're evacuating the entire massive Saris nest, just surrendering the whole site to the Fizz. And Unathil, believing the Jedi brought the reactor fuel there on purpose to trigger it, is using this whole misunderstanding as political leverage against Luke.
So while the Jedi are dealing with this massive scientific misunderstanding, Han Solo is simultaneously unraveling the actual military threat.
Right. Han, always the pragmatist, uses his underworld contacts to get in touch with the Squibs, the traffickers, Sly, Grease, and Emila, who were moving the Killiksart replicas.
Specifically, a model of the Millennium Falcon. And this leads to a horrifying breakthrough. June, a Sullustan captain, and his Ewok co-pilot, Tarfang, show up at Han's quarters with the cargo manifest. They handle a huge shipment of these replicas.
And Han's intuition, honed by years of smuggling, is just screaming that this is a Trojan horse. He suspects something is wrong, grabs one of the Falcon replica models, and just hurls it to the floor.
And the result is pure terror. The model doesn't just shatter, it explodes into this massive droning cloud of blue-black insects, each about the size of your thumb.
Gorog assassin bugs, hundreds of them, all carrying venom on their proboscises. The shock of finding the swarm where he expected, a hand-sized model, it knocks Han backward. It's this instant, overwhelming display of lethal, mass-produced biological warfare.
But the truly terrifying part is where these replicas were delivered. They weren't going to some local pirate den. June confirms the models were delivered as a promotional run, a huge consignment, directly to the Fifth Fleet.
The core command structure of the Galactic Alliance military.
This takes the whole conflict from a border skirmish to an attempted decapitation strike on the highest military level. The Killik plan wasn't just piracy, it was deep cover infiltration and mass assassination targeting Alliance Command. And June and Tarfang unwittingly delivered, as they put it, a whole Ronto full of Gorog assassin bugs to the Fifth Fleet.
And what about the criminals they were using? June and Tarfang said they were caught by the bugs and put in what they were told was a Ceres rehabilitation house.
Which we learned was actually an acceleration facility, a place designed to quickly and brutally turn hardened criminals into compliant joiners by just overwhelming their minds. The sheer ruthlessness of turning people into involuntary couriers for an assassination plot on this scale just raises the stakes dramatically.
So while the Jedi are racing to contain these nanotech and biological threats, the Darkness is also waging this very sophisticated psychological war, and it's being led by Lomi Plo.
Right. Luke constantly feels her presence, and it doesn't manifest as a physical threat. It's this persistent cold ache or a chill in the Force, and it's designed specifically to instill fear and incapacitate any Jedi who senses it.
Lomi Plo, she understands that Jedi are at their strongest when they're certain, so her entire offensive strategy is built around exploiting that.
Doubt-based invisibility. When Luke and Han are tracking Gorog sources on one of the Nest ships, they realize that Lomi Plo is visible to non-Jedi like June, but she is completely undetectable to Luke and Han when they're in their vac suits.
And that realization connects right back to core Jedi philosophy, specifically Yoda's teaching. Cloud your vision, doubt will.
Exactly. Her power doesn't make her physically invisible. It exploits the internal psychological weaknesses, the fears, the uncertainties, and most importantly, the doubts of her Jedi targets. Luke realizes he can't trust his own senses when he's confronting her because his own internal uncertainty creates a blind spot in the Force.
Which forces him into this agonizing, desperate countermove to break her hold.
Yeah, knowing he needs some kind of massive sensory input to override the manipulation, he intentionally has Han shoot him in the back with a stun blast.
It's just this searing, massive jolt of physical pain, which he then channels directly into that cold ache of Lomi Plo's touch.
The idea being that by confronting the pain head-on, he can force the connection to break. That jolt temporarily forces her touch to release and gives him just enough of a window to hide their presences from her, using the Force. It's not a victory, it's a self-inflicted wound just to survive her surveillance.
And this psychological war extends right into the political and emotional sphere through Alima Rar, the Dark Nest's Night Herald.
Oh yeah, she actively works to manipulate Luke and sow this deep political discord, and it's all aimed at destroying the fragile trust between Luke and Mara.
And her attack is so calculated, it targets Luke's deepest, most repressed desire, the truth about his mother, Padme.
Alima suggests that Mara lied years ago about botching the assassination of Dax Res. She implies that if Dax Res had lived, he was the only one with the data or the connections who could have helped Luke finally unlock the secrets of Padme's death and her history with Anakin.
Alema knows that Mara's reluctance to talk about her time as the Emperor's hand was always a source of tension. So by suggesting Mara actively hid the key to his family's history out of guilt, she's weaponizing decades of unspoken fears.
And at the same time, her political attack on Raynar is just as effective. She completely leverages the scientific misunderstanding of the Fizz. She falsely accuses the Jedi of bringing reactor fuel to Wotaba and all the Utejutu worlds just to trigger the nanotech.
And since the Killik's world is literally dissolving around them, Waynar, who's already suspicious, is easily convinced. He believes the Jedi manufactured this plague to drive them out.
Which brings us back to Luke's impossible dilemma. Even though he believes Mara, Alima rattles off a secret access code to C-3PO, a code that leads to R2-D2's hidden records about Mara's past missions.
And Luke decides to accept it. He chooses to face that frightening unknown, that slim chance of deception, rather than let the Dark Nest win by keeping him ignorant and paranoid.
This era is also defined by the chilling transformation of Jacen Solo. He is the ultimate counterpoint to Luke's attempts to rebuild Jedi principles. And the whole thing is catalyzed by the revelation of his secret daughter, Helena, with Queen Mother Tenel Ka.
Right, the secrecy around Helena's birth is critical context here. Tenel Ka, the Queen Mother of Hapes, she used the Force to slow her own pregnancy, to keep the child's existence a secret from Hapan politics.
Specifically from her grandmother, Ta Chun, who was always plotting.
But secrets get out. Goreg assassins attack the baby in the Queen Mother's nursery, getting in through secret ventilation tunnels. Jacen and Tenel Ka have to fight them off in this brutal, close-quarters battle.
And they're aided by Ben Skywalker, who, through the Force, unknowingly helps them track the insect's tiny movements inside the walls.
And the fact that this was an orchestrated plot is confirmed when Jacen confronts the architect, Ta Chun.
And she admits it. With this cold cynicism, she said she hired Goreg to kill the baby. She saw it as just, Hapan political housekeeping, and the price for the contract. Hyperspace-capable vessels for the Killiks, which she didn't even bother to ask what they needed.
And this is where Jacen makes his definitive dark turn. He's driven by his love for Helena and this terrible vision he's had of the future. He decides that his daughter will only be safe if the entire Killik species is eliminated.
He believes as long as the colony exists, the Dark Nest will be a threat to her. And his response to Ta Chun is swift and horrifyingly efficient. He completely abandons traditional Jedi principles.
I know restraint.
None. He uses this frighteningly aggressive Force technique. He sends a crackling charge of raw Force energy right through Ta Chun's brain to rip out the details of her contracts and contacts.
Leaving her with a shattered, broken brain. It ends her political menace permanently, but it also definitively marks Jacen's descent into this brutal, utilitarian ideology.
He is now operating under the absolute certainty that the Killiks must be destroyed to prevent the eternal war he foresaw. He's prioritizing the safety of one person, his daughter, above the lives of an entire species. The principle of the sanctity of life that Luke is trying so hard to instill is just completely jettisoned.
And the shift from that psychological warfare to outright military conflict is immediate and massive. Luke and Han, they're aboard June's transport, and they finally approach the Dark Nest's homeworld, the Tusken's Eye.
And they confirm their absolute worst fears. This is not some small localized rebellion anymore.
They realize the moons orbiting the planet, they're not moons at all.
They're 15 egg-shaped nest ships. Enormous vessels, each one roughly 8 kilometers long. This is proof of species-wide mobilization on a truly terrifying scale.
One nest ship for each of the 14 Uteju nests, plus one extra for the Dark Nest itself. And this confirms why the Killiks were so desperate for reactor fuel and hyperdrive coolant, the exact materials the nanotech was attacking.
They're planning to use these massive ships to jump the entire colony across the galaxy, to expand far beyond their borders and collide directly with the Chiss ascendancy.
And Luke just feels the absolute weight of that betrayal. He realizes Unathul wasn't some innocent victim of the Fizz, he was a calculated liar. Raynar and the whole colony were part of this massive mobilization plan from the beginning, trapping the Jedi while they executed their strategic move.
So, in response, the Galactic Alliance, led by Admiral Buatu, a veteran Bothan strategist, enforces a strict military blockade of the UTG-2 Nebula.
Which is essential to appease the Chiss, who see this Killik expansion as a direct invasion threat on their frontier.
And it's right into this blockade that Leia and Sabotage fly, only to be captured and detained by the Alliance fleet, which is commanded by Commodore Gavin Darklighter.
And this is the moment the Jedi Order's internal conflict becomes a very public, institutional crisis.
It really is. While Luke is stranded, Chief Omas, the Alliance Chief of State, is just deeply frustrated. He believes the Jedi put the Killik's well-being above the Alliance's during the previous Korbu crisis. He sees Luke's attempts at diplomacy as weakness.
So Omas, seeing Luke as out of contact, takes a calculated political risk. He appoints Corran Horn, a respected but often fiercely independent Jedi Master, as the interim head of the Order.
And his reasoning is pretty clear. The Order needs to show that it prioritizes the Alliance above all else, and he thinks Horn is the one who can force the Jedi back into military alignment.
But this sparks immediate internal rebellion among the Jedi. Kip Duran and his team, they see this as a political power grab, and they immediately commandeer a squadron of Stealth X's, the advanced Jedi starfighters, to go rescue Luke, Han, Leia, and Saba.
But Leia, even under Saba's intense training, is not about to be passively rescued or stranded.
No. Leia, who has always operated on instinct and principle, she just defies the blockade with the Millennium Falcon. She deliberately broadcasts her position and crosses the line, forcing Commodore Darklighter's hand.
And that results in a full alert from the Alliance fleet, including Admiral Akbar's own flagship. The source material says this one act of defiance changes the relationship between the Jedi and the Alliance forever.
Yeah, the battle meld between the Jedi pilots, Mara included, is electric with tension. They're ready to fight their own side's fighters if they have to. Leia has forced a military confrontation just by refusing to be detained.
And it's a perfect example of the paradox in Saba Sabatine's training. Saba is constantly pushing Leia to learn to take orders and follow rules, but when Leia defiantly breaches the blockade, Saba, while appearing resigned, is also implicitly approving.
It's the ultimate lesson, right? A Jedi has to learn discipline, but ultimately must be ready to challenge authority when their conscience or the Force demands it, even if it causes chaos.
And that chaos is exactly what Jacen Solo is manufacturing. So now you have two distinct, unauthorized preemptive strikes happening at the same time.
Jacen, still driven by his vision, uses his Force bond to mislead Jaina and Zek. He convinces them that the Chiss are about to launch a surprise attack and that they have to be dealt with first.
He leads a strike on a Chiss supply depot, dropping glop bombs and proton bombs. His goal isn't destruction, it's provocation. He wants to prod the Chiss, to force them to react before they're fully ready, because he believes that's the only way to head off the bigger war he saw.
The tactical details really show his ruthlessness. He cuts off Jaina during the attack run, stays on course under heavy fire just to guide his glop bomb in, and then he purposefully targets an ammo dump right next to a repair hangar full of Chiss personnel.
Forcing Jaina and Zek to choose. They either have to retreat or risk the mission to chase the personnel out and save them.
And Jaina is left just furious and betrayed. She realizes Jacen manipulated their twin bond, this tool of unconditional trust, to achieve his ruthless goals. She sends her anger right back through that bond, vowing never to fly with him again. It's a complete fracturing of the core family unit.
But here's the massive strategic irony. That seemingly reckless chaos is used by their brilliant Bothan, Admiral Buatu, to his advantage when the Killik Nest ships finally attack.
Buatu is a master strategist. He understands that the Jedi, for all their lack of central command, are his greatest tactical asset precisely because they are so unpredictable.
He uses the combined effect of all their erratic actions, Mara's initial Stealth X attack, Leia's resistance, even Jacen's reckless strike on the Chiss to create tactical doubt among the Killiks.
He executes this masterful bluff. When the battle starts, he feigns the defeat of his flagship, the Admiral Akbar. He uses decoys and specific damage reports to convince the Killik command ship they've won a major victory.
But his real focus is on the Dark Nest ship, which Leia identifies as Bug 1, the only ship that feels completely empty in the Force, suggesting Lomi Plo isn't on it.
And his goal is explicitly not to destroy the Killik fleet. That would risk starting the very eternal war Jacen feared. Buwatu's objective is simply to make the Killiks retreat and believe they lost the battle because of the Jedi's unknown erratic capabilities.
He uses strategic uncertainty as a weapon against a collective mind that relies on certainty.
And that military analysis ties right back to Luke's own profound realization about his leadership philosophy. His whole effort to build an order of self-directing, conscience-led Jedi. It resulted in exactly this mess.
You have all these good people.
Yeah.
Corran Horn prioritizing the Alliance, Kip Duran prioritizing the Jedi's freedom, Leia prioritizing immediate action, all acting on their conscience, but with no unified direction. The commandeered fleets, the rogue strikes, the chaos, it all stemmed from that lack of central, decisive leadership.
Luke realizes that while no single person had made a truly selfish or wrong decision from their own point of view, there was no one there to make their decisions work together. His faith in the Force to guide the many had been misplaced in a time of crisis. The Order needed an anchor.
And the most provocative part of this whole section is Buwadu's final analysis of the situation. He actually views Jaina's unauthorized strike against the Chiss as a stroke of genius, despite the chaos it caused.
He argues that her reckless action might have actually been the Killik colony's only hope of survival, against a deceitful and prepared Chiss attack. He points out that the Chiss are masters of subterfuge. He says, that's the trouble with Chiss messages, isn't it? You never know when they are telling the truth.
So Buatu is suggesting that Jacen's chaos, which was intended for his own dark ends, might have inadvertently created the exact unpredictable element the Alliance needed to survive.
So when we pull back from this frantic period, the insights we gain are, I think, far more critical than just the events themselves. We're left with a clear understanding of the layered threats that almost brought down the galaxy.
First, you have the scientific revelation of the fizz, this hyper-advanced, self-replicating nanotech that survived a supernova, a technological marvel that dwarfed anything the Galactic Alliance had. And the irony is that the Killiks are just victims of an ancient environmental defense system they didn't understand.
Which Anuthal then cynically leveraged to track Luke.
Exactly. The second, you have the strategic danger of the Gorog assassination plot. I mean, the sheer logistics of mass-producing and trafficking Starship replicas filled with swarms of venomous assassin bugs and getting them delivered directly to the Fifth Fleet. That shows terrifying sophistication.
It wasn't an attempt at war. It was an attempt at immediate, high-level structural collapse.
And finally, you have the utter moral disintegration within the Jedi Order. It's characterized by Luke trying to rebuild principles while literally fighting Lomiplo's doubt-based manipulation, contrasted against Jacen Solo, who's willing to abandon those very same principles, use brutal force techniques, and orchestrate preemptive wars based on his own absolute dangerous certainty.
This deep dive really illustrates how quickly a local problem, a simple case of Tabana piracy, can unravel into a galactic war when you add in political mistrust, radical agendas like the Dark Nests, and a dangerous misunderstanding of hidden technology. To get it, you have to integrate military strategy, ancient biology, and force-based psychological warfare all at the same time.
And that strategic intersection brings us to our final provocative thought. Admiral Buatu explicitly chose to use doubt, the very same psychological weapon Lomiplo used, as his military strategy. He deliberately faked his flagship's defeat and capitalized on Jedi unpredictability to create strategic uncertainty.
So, if the Darkness relies on manufactured doubt and fear to blind its enemies, what are the ethical implications of the Alliance using strategic uncertainty, military bluffs, intentional unpredictability, even allowing rogue actions like Jaina's as a calculated tool for peace?
Is it always the moral imperative to operate with perfect clarity and full disclosure in a time of crisis? Or can carefully manufactured confusion and strategic doubt sometimes be the only effective path to compel a retreat, minimize casualties, and avoid the devastating consequences of a full-scale predictable war? It forces you to consider whether the principle of transparency should ever be overwritten by the pragmatism of survival.